President Joe Biden went on ABC News with an interview with George Stephanopoulos. Now, I believe this is actually an edited interview. I don't think it's live. I'm pretty sure. I remember hearing that it was supposed to be like a edited interview, but I'm not sure. And this obviously comes after the insanely poor debate that happened between him and Donald Trump last week. And we'll just have to see all the excuses he kind of brings to the table, see how well he does in the interview itself. But again, we'll just kind of get right into that. All right, let's just get right into it.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with the debate. You and your team have said you had a bad night, but your friend Nancy Pelosi actually framed the question that I think is on the minds of millions of Americans. Was this a bad episode or the sign of a more serious condition?
It was a bad episode. No indication of any serious condition. I was exhausted.
Well, then you've been having a series of bad episodes, my friend, because this is not the only time he slipped up in a major way when it comes to just speaking in general. And that's kind of what we're going to expect with this interview. It feels like this is more than likely going to be Biden kind of running back a lot and just like kind of being like, no, it was just one bad night. Everyone's entitled to one bad night, you know? So we'll see.
I didn't listen to my instincts in terms of preparing, and I had a bad night.
You know, you say you were exhausted, and I know you've said that before as well, but you came, and you did have a tough month, but you came home from Europe about 11 or 12 days before the debate, spent 6 days in Camp David. Why wasn't that enough rest time, enough recovery time?
Because I was sick. I was feeling terrible. Matter of fact, the docs with me, I asked them, they did a COVID test because they're trying to figure out what's wrong. They did a test to see whether or not I had some infection, a virus. I didn't. They just had a really bad cold.
And did you ever watch the debate afterwards?
I don't think I did, no.
Well, what I want to get at is what were you experiencing as you were going through the debate? Did you know how badly it was going?
Yeah, look, the whole way I prepared, nobody's fault, mine. Nobody's fault but mine. I prepared what I usually would do, sitting down, as I did come back with foreign leaders or the National Security Council, for explicit detail. And I realized about partway through that, I get quoted, the New York Times had me down at 10 points before the debate, 9 now, or whatever the hell it is. The fact of the matter is that what I looked at is that he also lied 28 times. The way the debate ran, not my fault, no one else's fault. No one else's fault.
But it seemed like you were having trouble from the first question in, even before he spoke.
Well, I just had a bad night. You've had some bad interviews once in a while. I can't remember any, but I'm sure you do.
I've had plenty. I guess the question, the problem is here for a lot of Americans watching, is you've said, going back to 2020, watch me, to people who are concerned about your...
I mean, with that whole thing, like, asking George if, like, oh, well, you've had bad interviews too, but, like, it's just an interview. It's not him trying to convince people that he should be president. Like, that's insane to kind of compare it so. Like, yeah, he might have just been feeling down during some interviews, so it didn't, the content wasn't that great. But, like, you were supposed to be up there trying to convince the American people that you should be the next president, and you failed. And also with the whole, like, Trump lies thing, well, it is very much true that he lied a lot up on that stage. I mean, that's what Trump does. I said this before, that's what Trump does. That's what kind of people expect from him at this point. It's just to, say the same lies over and over and over again. So, like, you just need to look at least somewhat coherent. You just need to be, like, somewhat coherent, like, in contrast with him, and he didn't. And that was a big failure on his part.
Age, and, 50 million Americans watched that debate. It seemed to confirm fears they already had.
Well, look, after that debate, I did 10 major events in a row, including until 2 o'clock in the morning after that debate. I did events in North Carolina. I did events in Georgia. Did events like this today. Large crowds, overwhelming response, no slipping. And so I just had a bad night. I don't know why.
And how quickly did it come to you that you were having that bad night?
Well, it came to me as having a bad night when I realized that even when I was answering a question, even though they turned his mic off, he was still shouting. And I let it distract me. I'm not blaming it on that. But I realized that I just wasn't in control.
But part of the other concern is that this seems to have fit into a pattern of decline that has been reported on recently. New York Times had a headline on July 2nd, Biden's lapses are said to be increasingly common and worrisome. Here's what they wrote. People who have spent time with President Biden over the last few months or so said the lapses appear to have grown more frequent.
He looks pissed. Look at him. Look at his face. He looks pissed. Also, with the whole thing of like Trump interrupting him, it's a debate. Like, you should still be like comprehensible, able to navigate a debate where your opponent is kind of yelling at you and saying things, but you're still able to get your point across while also addressing them. And obviously, with the whole like mics getting turned off, I do think that was a good way to do it. And maybe that wouldn't come across, live because they can't hear the other guy, so they don't know that he's yelling as you're saying your shit. But still, like, it just feels like excuses.
More pronounced, and after Thursday's debate, more worrisome. By many accounts, as evidenced by video footage, observation, and interviews, Mr. Biden is not the same today as he was even when he took office 3.5 years ago. Similar reporting in the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal. Are you the same man today that you were when you took office 3.5 years ago?
In terms of successes, yes. I also was the guy who put together a peace plan for the Middle East that may be coming to fruition. I was also the guy that expanded NATO. I was also the guy that grew the economy. All the individual things that were done were ideas I had or I fulfilled. I moved on. And so, for example, well, that was true then. What's Biden done lately? Today, just announced 200,000 new jobs. We're moving in a direction that no one's ever taken on. I know you know this from the days in the government. I took on Big Pharma. I beat them. No one said I could beat them. I took on all the things we said we got done. We were told we couldn't get done. And part of it is what I said when I ran was I wanted to do three things. Restore some decency to the office, restore some support for the middle class instead of trickle-down economics built from the middle out and the bottom up. The way the wealthy still do fine, everyone does better, and unite the country.
But what has all that work over the last 3.5 years cost you physically, mentally, emotionally?
Well, I just think it cost me a really bad night, a bad run. But, George, I'm optimistic about this country. I don't think we're a country of losers, that he points out. I don't think America's in tough shape. I think America's on the cusp of breaking through in so many incredible opportunities. This next term, I'm going to make sure we have straighten out the tax system. I'm going to make sure we're in a situation where we have health care for all people, where we're in a position where we have child care and elder care, free up, and all these things. The one thing I'm proudest of is, remember when my economic plan was put forward, a lot of the mainstream economists said it's not going to work. Well, guess what? We now have 16 Nobel laureates, 16 of them in economics, saying that Biden's next term would be, based on what he wants to do, enormous success. Trump's plan would cause a recession, would significantly increase inflation. I've made great progress, and that's what I plan on doing, and we can do this.
I understand that. And
Here's the thing with Biden, too, is that we just saw there him like kind of list out his accomplishments. That's something that he really needs to like focus on more when it comes to just the debate itself, in terms of this presidential run, because he doesn't do that quite often outside of like his rallies, which only his like top supporters are going to go see anyways. So the general public, everyone in between of the left and right, they're not going to see that, so they don't know. I think he needs to get better at his messaging. Also, like, something I really think they need to stop doing is going to NATO for, like, their signs of succession, because the normal person does not care about NATO all that much. They don't really. Like, they want to, a lot of them focus on stuff that's in home, like in-house. problems that affect them every single day. They don't really see that as like a factor of their everyday life. So I think he needs to focus more on like stuff that really affects the everyday person, and also just needs to get better at like the stuff that he's been able to get past, the stuff that he's been able to succeed at. But even then, I'd much rather just have him gone. He's not like, because even then he's not the best person to really like brag about those accomplishments when, you know, shit still sucks out here for the everyday person. But yeah, he definitely does have victories that he can go to. He's just not really great at focusing on them and relaying them to the public as a whole.
And I'm not disputing that. What I'm asking you is about your personal situation. Do you dispute that there have been more lapses, especially in the last several months?
Can I run the 110 flat? No. But I'm still in good shape.
Are you more frail?
No.
I know you
Come
spoke.
keep my schedule.
I know you spoke with your doctor after the debate. What did he say?
He said, he just looked at me and said, "You're exhausted." I said, "Look, I have medical doctors travel me everywhere, every president does, as you know. Medical doctors, some of the best in the world, travel me everywhere I go. I have an ongoing assessment of what I'm doing. They don't hesitate to tell me if they think there's something wrong."
I know you said you have an ongoing assessment. Have you had a
Yeah, I'm sure these doctors aren't frightened to tell the president that he is just not fit. I'm sure these doctors don't feel like there's a balance and imbalance there when they're dealing with the president of the United States. And I don't think like, and it's more like maybe like, yeah, health wise you're doing fine outside of the cold, but like, are these doctors who are there to measure your physical health or your mental health? Because those are completely different things. Like maybe you need someone to really like psychoanalyze you, make sure you're actually like, you know, up there mentally, because it doesn't seem that way.
full neurological and cognitive evaluation?
I get a full neurological test every day with me. And I've had a full physical. I had, I've been at Walter Reed for my physicals. Yes, the answer is
I know your doctor said he consulted with a neurologist. I guess I'm asking a slightly different question. Have you had the specific cognitive tests, and have you had a neurologist, a specialist, do an examination?
no. No one said I had to. No one said. They said I'm good.
Would you be willing to undergo an independent medical evaluation that included neurological and cognitive tests and release the results to the American people?
Look, I have a cognitive test every single day.
Then release them.
Every day I have that test. Everything I do. Not only am I campaigning, but I'm running.
Then release them. And that's so easy to just do then. Like if everything's going fine, if you have cognitive tests every single day apparently, then just say, hey, here they are. Here's the results. I'll show them to everyone. Like if you're so sure that you are perfectly fine, that you are very capable, you're very mentally well, regardless of what everyone's saying, then just show your test results. That should be easy to do. So I don't know why he's trying to like run back on it. It definitely is. This is not a favorable position for him to be in, where he's just like, well, I take them every single day. Just take my word on it, bro.
In the world. And that's not how it sounds like hyperbole. But we are the essential nation in the world. Madeleine Albright was right. And every single day, for example, today, before I come out here, I'm on the phone with the Prime Minister of, anyway, I shouldn't get into detail, but with Netanyahu. I'm on the phone with the new Prime Minister of England. I'm working on what we're doing with regard to, in Europe, with regard to expansion of NATO and whether it's going to stick. I'm taking on Putin. Every day, there's no day I go through, there are not those decisions I have to make every single day.
And you have been doing that.
But again, worldwide discussion definitely matters. Like in terms of relations to other countries, that stuff obviously matters. But to the everyday American, that isn't that important to what goes on in their regular lives. So when you're talking about all this other stuff that they don't feel like affects them, they're not gonna be, racing to go vote for you. Like again, going back to NATO, like the normal person, everyday person, does not give a fuck about NATO. Nobody spends most of their days being like, man, NATO is really affecting my life right now. What are they doing up with NATO? It's again just going back to topics that the everyday American isn't going to look at and be like, yeah, this guy understands me and knows what's best for me. Just like he's talking about all these like prime ministers and stuff like that. Like, what does that have to do with my way of life and things going better for me?
And the American people have been watching, yet their concerns about your age and your health are growing. So that's why I'm asking, to reassure them, would you be willing to have the independent medical evaluation?
Watch me there's a lot of time left in this campaign. It's over 125 days.
So
I'll
the
make
answer,
the decision.
the right answer right now is no, you don't want to do that, right?
No, I've already done it.
You talked a lot about your successes at the beginning of this interview, and I don't want to dispute that. I don't want to debate that. But as you know, elections are about the future, not the past. They're about tomorrow, not yesterday. And the question on so many people's minds right now is, can you serve effectively for the next 4 years?
George, I'm the guy that put NATO together, the future. No one thought I could expand it. I'm the guy that shut Putin down. No one thought could happen. I'm the guy that put together the South Pacific Initiative with AUKUS. I'm the guy that got 50 nations, out, not only in Europe, outside of Europe as well, to help Ukraine. I'm the guy that got Japanese to expand their budget. And for example, when I decided we used to have 40% of the computer chip in it, we invented the chip, that little chip, the computer chip. It's in everything from cell phone to weapons. And so we used to have 40%, we're down to virtually nothing. So I get in the plane against the advice of everybody, and I fly to South Korea. I convinced them to invest in the United States billions of dollars. Now we have tens of billions of dollars being invested in the United States, making us back in a position where we're going to own that industry again. We have, anyway, I don't want to take too much credit. I have a great staff.
But I guess my point
Like, he does have a lot of good people around him. Like, see, him saying I have a great staff is true. But he couldn't even finish that thought, which is bad enough. But him again, just going back to NATO, just again, he has good things he can talk about, but he doesn't really bring them up that often.
is all that takes
And also, again, if he just accepted a cognitive test that was released to the public, the results were released to the public, and they turned out to be fine, it would be a lot more favorable for him than him just being like, no, I'm not done to do it. No, you can't force me.
Do you have the mental and physical capacity to do it for another 4 years?
I believe so. I wouldn't be running if I didn't think I did. Look,
Unless you had a massive ego, which his attitude since the debate hasn't really favored the opposite of that position, being like, no, I'm still gonna run, even though so many people are just like, dude, we do not believe in you. We do not believe you could do this. Please, for the love of God. He's just like, no, it has to be me. Me. I don't really trust the fact that if you truly believe that, you would drop out. I think your ego is just feeding into it, being like, no, I have to run. I had to prove everyone wrong.
I'm running again because I think I understand best what has to be done to take this nation to a completely new level. We're on our way. And look, the decision recently made by the Supreme Court on immunity, the next president of the United States, it's not just about whether he or she knows what they're doing. It's not about a conglomerate of people making decisions. It's about the character of the president. The character of the president is going to determine whether or not this Constitution is employed the right way.
Are you sure you're being honest with yourself when you say you have the mental and physical capacity to serve another 4 years?
Yes, I am, because, George, the last thing I want to do is not be able to meet that. I think, as some of the senior economists and senior foreign policy specialists say, if I stop now, I go down history as a pretty successful president. No one thought I could get done what we got done.
But are you being honest with yourself as well about your ability to defeat Donald Trump right now?
Yes. You
say that, and let me challenge you, because you were close but behind going into the debate. You're further behind now by any measure. It's been a two-man race for several months. Inflation has come down. In those last few months, he's become a convicted felon, yet you're still falling further behind.
You guys keep saying that. George, you know polling better than anybody. Do you think polling data is accurate as it used to be?
I don't think so, but I think when you look at all the polling data right now, it shows that he's certainly ahead in the popular vote, probably even more ahead in the battleground states. And one of the other key factors there is it shows that in many of the battleground states, the Democrats who are running for Senate and the House are doing better than you are.
Well, that's not unusual in some states. I carried an awful lot of Democrats last time I ran in 2020. Look, I remember them telling me the same thing in 2020. I can't win. The polls show I can't win. Remember 2020, the red wave was coming. Before the vote, I said that's not going to happen. We're going to win. We did better in all three than almost any incumbent president ever has done.
I mean, we didn't win the red wave. It's just that they didn't win by an over majority. Like the red wave, if I remember correctly, the way it went down is that there was still a bunch of Republicans who got voted in. It just wasn't an insane amount, and that's what was like the big depressing factor for a lot of like people on the right, just being like, "Ah, God, we didn't win as much as we wanted." It was still all right for them. Like they didn't exactly look bad in defeat. They just didn't get as much as they wanted to do. Like they just didn't get as many people in office as they wanted.
They said in 2023, all the tough races we're not going to win. I went into all those areas, all those districts, and we won.
All that is true, but 2020 was a close race. And your approval rating has dropped significantly since then. I think the last poll I saw was about 36%. The number of Americans who think you're too old to serve has doubled since 2020. Wouldn't a clear-eyed political calculus tell you that it's going to be much tougher to win?
And I do understand the whole thing of like, well, polling isn't that accurate, or it's not like the best representation for, you know, a certain topic, but it still matters to get like an overall view of what's going on. Like, yeah, people thinking that Trump did better than Biden in the debate is obviously something that should be important, even though, like, with those only two options there, like, it doesn't really leave in the room of someone being like, I don't think either one of them did great, but it still should say a lot that more people thought Trump did better in that debate than Biden, and that Trump is doing better in some regard in these states, like in these battleground states too, despite the fact that that also doesn't pay attention to the people who just aren't really solid on either way, who like don't really believe on either side, the people in the middle. It's just, but then again, it's still a good representation when you're comparing to people who's doing better in which margins. And Trump does look better in those margins in terms of like people. He has a stronger fan base behind him than Biden does, because a lot of people on the left, especially after seeing that debate performance, they just don't believe in Biden. And like all those, victories that he, talks about, it's not like they couldn't be done by someone who is more competent, more comprehensible, can, actually doesn't stumble on the words the way that he does regularly. Like, there's plenty of like established Democrats who could do exactly what Joe Biden did, and just be able to relay that information to the public in a better way.
In 2024,
not when you're running against a pathological liar, not when he hadn't been challenged in a way that he's about to be challenged, not when people.
You've had months to challenge him.
Oh, sure, I had months, but I was always
the battle with the elderly.
A lot of other things, like wars around the world, like keeping NATO together, like working anyway. But look,
Do you really believe you're not behind right now?
I think all the pollsters I talk to tell me it's a toss-up. It's a toss-up. And when I'm behind, there's only one poll I'm really far behind: CBS poll and NBC. And
New York Times and NBC both have you about 6 points behind in the popular vote.
That's exactly right. New York Times had me behind before anything having to do with this race. Had me behind 10 points. 10 points had me behind. Nothing's changed substantially in the New York Times poll.
Just when you look at the reality, though, Mr. President, I mean, you won the popular vote in 2020, but it was still deadly close in the electoral
By 7
college.
million votes.
Yes, but you're behind now in the popular vote.
I don't buy that.
Is it worth the risk?
I don't think anybody's more qualified to be president or win this race than me.
The heart of your case against Donald
There
Trump.
it is. There's the ego coming in. Be like, nobody's more qualified than me. That's insane to believe that nobody's more qualified than, like, obviously he needs to believe in himself if he's going to run for president. That's the whole thing. Like, he needs to, hype himself up. But it's still there are plenty of people, especially on the left, that could do a way better job than him. That's insane.
Trump is that he's only out for himself, putting his personal interest ahead of the national interest. How do you respond to critics who say that by staying in the race, you're doing the same thing?
Oh, come on. Well, I don't think those critics know what they're talking about.
They're just wrong?
It's wrong. Look, Trump is...
The critics are wrong. The media is fake. he's in his Trump era, man. Just completely ignoring, the polling, completely ignoring everything that the media is saying. Just it's all fake. He even has gotten like a spray tan recently. I mean, you can kind of see it here, but it's definitely more noticeable in some pictures of him. It's just not. He's in his Trump era, man. He's like, look, if you can't beat him, you gotta join him.
He's a pathological liar. Trump is, he is. Have you ever seen anything Trump did that benefited somebody else, not him? You can't answer, I know.
I've questioned him and his allies as persistently as any journalist has.
No, I know you have. I'm not being critical.
Yeah.
I'm not being critical. But look, I mean, the man is a congenital liar. As I said, they pointed out in that debate he lied 27, 28 times or whatever number, over 20 times. Talk about how good his economy was, how he brought down inflation, how this is a guy who, unlike only other president other than him is Hoover, lost more jobs than he created. This is a guy who told us to put bleach in our arms to deal with COVID, when over a million people died. This is a guy who talks about wanting to get rid of the healthcare provision we put in place. This is a guy who wants to give the power back to big pharma to be able to charge exorbitant prices for drugs. This is a guy who wants to undo every single thing I've done. Every single thing.
I understand that. I understand that's why you want to stay in the race. But have you convinced yourself that only you can defeat him?
I convinced myself of two things. I'm the most qualified person to beat him, and I know how to get things done.
If you can be convinced that you cannot defeat Donald Trump, will you stand down?
It depends if the Lord Almighty comes out and tells me that, I might do that.
Well, I mean, on a more practical level, Washington Post just reported in the last hour that Senator Mark Warner is assembling a group of senators together to try to convince you to stand down because they don't think you can win.
Well, Mark is a good man, but we've never had that. He also tried to get the nomination too. Mark and I have a different perspective. I respect him.
And if Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and Nancy Pelosi come down and say, we're worried that if you stay in the race, we're going to lose the House and the Senate, how will you respond?
I go into detail with them. I've spoken to all of them in detail, including Jim Clyburn. Every one of them. They all said I should stay in the race. Stay in the race. No one said, none of the people said I should leave.
But if they do?
Well, it's like, we're not going to do that.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm sure. Look, I mean, if the Lord Almighty came down and said, Joe, get out of the race, I get out of the race, the Lord Almighty's not coming down. I mean, these hypotheticals, George, if all...
But it's not that hypothetical anymore. I grant that they have not requested the meeting, but it's been reported.
I've met with them. I've met with a lot of these people. I've talked with them regularly. I had an hour conversation with Hakeem. I had more time than that with Jim Clyburn. I spent time with many hours off and on the last little bit with Chuck Schumer. It's not like I had all the governors.
These aren't exactly the best people to be like, yeah, these are the people backing me up, especially like Nancy Pelosi and people like that, because they're also established Democrats who just are more focused on their personal interests. More so, I mean, we saw that with like the Nancy Pelosi stock trading thing, like years ago, where it was obvious that her and a lot of people like her on the left, on the Democratic side, are just more in it for personal gain than anything else. So saying like those are the people backing you, it's not a great look. Also saying that he was going after the nomination, I feel like that was trying to point him in a bad way. Like, no, he's trying to come for my spot. It's just like, there's no way that I feel like there were Democrats who honestly thought they were going to give the nomination over Biden when the left was so headstrong with him going into it. But also, it's just like, again, I just feel like this is his ego just playing into it over and over and over again. Like, he can't even answer the question, what if they said that we don't believe in you anymore and you need to step down? Like, he can't even give an answer for that hypothetical. He's just like, oh, but that would never happen because they think I'm great.
All the governors.
I agree that the Lord Almighty is not going to come down, but if you are told reliably from your allies, from your friends and supporters in the Democratic Party, in the House and the Senate, that they're concerned you're going to lose the House and the Senate if you stay in, what will you do?
I'm not going to answer that question. It's not going to happen.
What's your plan to turn the campaign around?
You saw it today. How many people do you draw crowds like I do today? You find me more enthusiastic than today? Huh?
I mean, the Trump crowd is pretty... Also, again, just going to the people who are already supporting you. Like, what are you doing to get the middle ground voter, the person who is, like, teetering on the line of who they want to vote for? Like, what are you doing that? They're, like, just going to, like, look at the size of my rallies. It's also very much a Trump thing, by the way. But going to that, it's just nothing, because it's just feeding into your base already. It's not going to persuade the people in the middle to go to your side.
I mean, I don't think you want to play the crowd game. Donald Trump can draw big crowds. There's no question about that.
He
Yeah.
can draw a big crowd, but what does he say? Who's he have? I'm the guy supposedly in trouble. We raised $38 million within 4 days after this. We have over 1 million individual contributors.
And again, just going to be like, look at the crowds we raise, look at the money that we raise. It's just terrible.
Individual contributors, less than $200. I mean, I've not seen what you're proposing.
You haven't seen the fall off in the polls. You haven't seen the reports of discontent in the Democratic Party, House Democrats, Senate Democrats.
I've seen it from the press.
Maybe this is the end of it. I have a feel. Yeah, it's just kind of them talking about it. Yeah, this was not the best look for him. I mean, I've already kind of talking about it throughout this entire interview, but it's just not a good look. It's just his ego showing in a big bad way. I don't think his ego is bigger than Trump's ego, but it's still an ego nonetheless. Of just being like, I'm the only person capable of taking him down. If all the Dems came to me and said, hey, we want you to step down because we're afraid we'll lose the House and the Senate, that's never going to happen because I'm so cool, I'm so great, and everybody loves me. Well, the polls say that you're very behind. Doesn't matter, the polls doesn't matter. He's going into his Trump era, right there. It's sad. It's just really sad. Again, if he was so comfortable being like, yeah, I'm doing well on these cognitive tests, I'm doing so great, everyone's over exaggerating, then show the results. Show them. Just do it. This is just a bad look. Because, like, if you're a middle ground voter, if you're teetering on the line, what did he say in this interview that would make you have any faith in him? In terms of not only just competency, but also, like, him being in your best, like, him acting upon your best interest. Where's the proof of that? Because it just doesn't exist. And look, Trump doesn't do that either. But it's not going to get those people who don't believe in either candidate right now to start believing in you. But yeah, that's all I have to really say about that.